Canada's feckless Prime Minister thought he could out-tough Donald Trump. He thought he could stare down number 47 and get him to blink. He wasn't just wrong. He was colossally wrong. Right now, there's data on a spreadsheet in Ottawa that no one in Carney's government wants Canadians to see, because once they see it, they realize this entire trade war was over before it even started. Stick them in the very end of this video, because you're going to understand exactly why Canada picked a fight it was mathematically incapable of winning, and why the president just found the perfect way to rub it in their face. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your major professor, celebrating yet another glorious day in the Trumpian golden age that you made possible back in November of 2024. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change not just this country, but indeed the entire world, more than you ever imagined, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Things are going from bad to worse for Mark Carney, Canada's ultra-woke prime minister. Trade talks between the United States and Canada collapsed at the end of last week. And by the weekend, Trump's 50% tariffs on roughly $20 billion of Canadian goods went into full effect. Bottom line, Trump is hitting Canada with tariffs because, as far as Trump is concerned, and I think rightly so, Canada has unfairly exploited its trade relationship with the United States for decades. They've run massive surpluses while relying on America for roughly 3/4 of their exports, 75%. All the while, they've been drifting toward closer ties with China, which Trump sees as a national security threat for the United States. And so Trump is using tariffs as leverage to force Ottawa into more favorable trade terms and border security cooperation. Carney isn't complying. Crazy Carney is actually doubling down, and he's just announced that Canada is going to be punching back. They're going to be matching U.S. duties dollar for dollar, imposing roughly 50% counter tariffs on about $20 billion worth of American goods. Now, what Carney thinks he's going to get out of this trade war is anyone's guess. He's certainly talking tough. Doug Ford, Ontario's premier, he's talking tough. They're all promising to hit the United States back and hit them hard. But again, the Achilles heel of wokeness is simply reality, right? That's the fundamental weakness of liberal wokeness. Reality. You can work yourself up into politically correct frenzies all you want. Reality doesn't change. Or as Ben Shapiro would say, reality don't care about your feelings. Eventually, someone does the math out loud, and they're the ones left standing there looking absolutely foolish. It's not hard. 70 to 75% of Canada's exports are sold to Americans. They're sold to the United States. 70 to 75%. You want to take a guess on how much of U.S. exports are sold to Canada? 14. Roughly 14% of our exports go to Canada. 75 versus 14. That's not a fight. That's not even a mismatch, okay? That's a man arm wrestling a bulldozer and calling it a rivalry. Canada is betting its entire economic future on a customer who could walk away and barely notice, while America is dealing with a supplier who can't survive the breakup. 75 versus 14. It's called leverage. Leverage is having what the other side wants. And Canada would economically implode if 75% of its export customers walked away, whereas the United States wouldn't even notice. You see it even clearer when it comes to GDP. Nearly 1/5 of Canada's entire GDP, 20%, is directly tied to selling stuff to Americans. You want to take a guess on what percentage of our GDP is reliant on Canadians buying our stuff? 1.5. It ain't even 2%. Again, numbers don't lie. Leverage doesn't lie. Canada needs America's market to survive, whereas Canada could disappear off the map and America wouldn't even notice. That's not a fair fight. That's not even a fight. That's a lopsided argument that Canada's been comfortable exploiting for decades, and now the bill has come due. And it actually gets worse. It's not just a matter of Canada being so disproportionately reliant on the United States economy. It's that Canada's economy itself is frankly puny. Even CNBC admitted it just today.
In the economic approach of Canada, I know you're familiar with GDP. Personal GDP actually is falling most years in Canada. The OECD projects that Canada, out of 38 OECD members, will rank 38, dead last in GDP per capita growth through 2060. And I'm trying to figure out why. I looked to see, and I do find one thing. It says here, tax and regulatory competitiveness. There's a gap even with the U.S. where we think permitting, and we've got all these problems down here. How bad is it in Canada? And what changes do you think need to be made at this point? I don't think you're really negotiating from a strong position based on these things.
Now, I won't bore you with the answer because it was basically a non-answer. There is no answer to that. The U.S. economy is roughly 10 to 12 times the size of Canada. If Canada were annexed, if it were somehow made the 51st state tomorrow, its GDP on a per capita basis would rank 50th of 51 states. It'd be ahead of only Mississippi. Texas alone, with a labor force nearly a third smaller than Canada's, produces roughly the same economic output as the entire country of Canada. One American state, one, doing what an entire sovereign nation does, with fewer workers, a third less. That's the humiliation Carney voters refuse to sit with. They keep talking about Canadian sovereignty like it's a trump card, when in reality, sovereignty doesn't make two wildly mismatched economies equal. But it's what President Trump did next that's perhaps, I gotta say, the single most humiliating move of them all. Wait until you see this. But first, gang, what's even more important than the economy is your health. Did you know that your bone marrow stops producing stem cells after 40? Production drops 75% by age 50. But 600 milligrams of epicatechin from cocoa signals it to start all over again. Even Joe Rogan talks about stem cells. Look at this.
I had a full-length rotator cuff tear, and the UFC gave me a doctor in Los Angeles, and he looks at my MRI and goes, "You're going to need surgery." I go, 100%? He goes, "I don't know how you're using it now. It's a matter of time. You're going to need surgery, so it might be better to do it now." So I got it shot up with stem cells. And this was the early days of stem cells in America, where you could get away with more. You got to go to Mexico now again.
But what's so cool is that this activates those same stem cells. No travel, no needles, no $50,000 tab. Even Harvard ran a massive study on this called the Cosmos study with over 21,000 participants. Don't take it from me. Look into the research yourself. Harvard scientist Dr. William Lee, he's spoken a lot about this. Taken daily, this cocoa can reduce heart attacks by 27% from flavanols. And the best part, Black Forest brought back their end of July deal just for my audience. So for 48 hours only, you can get buy two, get one free store-wide, including this cocoa, plus a free bottle of the cocoa flavanols. That's half your order for free. It's only through my link below, not on their site, and it's gone once the 48 hours are up. So make sure to click on that link below right now. On Tuesday, President Trump posted on Truth Social that the United States is, quote, giving serious consideration to changing the name of Lake Ontario to Lake America, because in his words, quote, "we don't expect to be doing much business with Ontario any longer." He even posted a map with Lake Ontario crossed out and Lake America written in gold lettering, American flag included. Now, obviously, the point there is that the President of the United States is mocking an entire Canadian province by name on the world stage, and there's absolutely nothing Mark Carney or Doug Ford or any other woke Canadian official can do about it except whine and complain, because that's all they got, because they got no leverage. They got no cards, as Trump would say. That, my friends, is what happens when you provoke a superpower 12 times your economic size and you don't have the cards to back up the bluff. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy was just saying this. I mean, think about the disparity between the two countries, right? He noted Canada gets the benefit of trading with the United States way more than the United States gets the benefit of trading with Canada. I mean, it's a country that basically doesn't have a military. It relies on our defense. It's a country that has a single-payer healthcare system that's failing. And so to think that they're going to launch a trade war with Donald Trump and actually win that war with the United States, it's beyond, to call it foolish is generous. It's actually delusional. And Carney's own base is starting to notice, even as their premiers keep performing outrage for the cameras. Here's the thing about fighting dollar for dollar that Carney's supporters conveniently ignore. Matching the tariff percentage does not mean you're matching the economic pain. Okay? Again, this isn't hard. Canada retaliating with tariffs on American steel and dairy and electronics doesn't cost the United States anywhere near what American tariffs cost Canada because the exposure isn't symmetrical. Again, it's like two boxers agreeing to trade punches of equal force, right? Except one guy weighs 340 pounds and the other weighs 40. Carney can match the number on paper. He can't match the damage. And so what is Carney doing? What's Carney doing in the midst of all that? While he's talking tough with Trump, he's increasingly selling out his nation to Beijing. Carney visited China back in January, and afterward, the two countries issued a joint statement committing to a, quote, new strategic partnership, including deeper trade ties. Canada's own foreign minister met repeatedly with China's Wang Yi and publicly called the China relationship one of Canada's most valued bilateral relationships. Meanwhile, bilateral trade between Canada and China has grown 16% in the first half of this year, with Canadian exports to China up over 23%. But unfortunately for Canada, that's nowhere near enough to compensate for the U.S. market, not even close. So in the meantime, ordinary Canadians are the ones left holding the bag. Trump's tariffs are already squeezing Canadian exporters in steel, aluminum, autos, and lumber. Ford and Carney's response is to promise government bailout programs funded by, you guessed it, more taxes on the very Canadians already getting hammered by the trade war their own government provoked. You don't replace a lost market with a government subsidy. Businesses don't want compensation for losing customers. They want the customers back. And the customers overwhelmingly are American. So bottom line, here's the truth Mark Carney's voters can't really cope with at this point. They were sold a fantasy of Canadian defiance, a globalist technocrat who was supposed to out-negotiate Donald Trump. Instead, they got a prime minister who picked a trade war he simply can't win, flirted with America's chief geopolitical rival, and is now watching one of his own provinces threaten to secede. Hello, Alberta. Meanwhile, Trump is out there casually threatening to rename one of the Great Lakes just to remind everyone north of the border exactly who has all the leverage in this relationship. That's not a president panicking. That's a president having fun, precisely because he knows how this ends. Canada is not going to win a trade war against an economy 12 times its size that buys 3/4 of everything it sells and that Canada can't function without. The sooner Carney voters accept that basic arithmetic, the sooner their groceries, their gas, and their jobs might actually start getting cheaper again. Until then, enjoy the view of Lake America. You asked for a leader who'd stand up to Trump. Instead, you got a failed liberal globalist who's making your entire country pay the price. Look, I know the world can feel like it's moving faster than any of us can keep up with, but you don't have to figure it out alone. Starting September 8th, the Civ Causa Masterclass is where we slow down, connect the dots, and build a framework for what's happening and what comes next. Click the link below and join me live.